Continue working with our checking tactics example, and our main goal is to illustrate the TryThis widget, which works extremely easily thanks to the people who did hard work to make it extremely easy for people like us. Okay, but first, one little issue. Sometimes what happens is when you work with metaprogramming and test something, it works, and you find it's because the term, for example, a proof has been found with some sorries being inserted. Okay, so to avoid that, when we want to have a critical thing, we work with without to sorry do. We add this. Now, what this does is make sure that sorries are not generated while running the tactic. Okay, this is a refinement of last times. Okay, our main goal though today is to have a question mark version of this and have it run with the extra feature of having the TryThis widget. Okay. First, without the extra feature, but we'll write it in a more verbose fashion that's necessary for the implementation. So this elab actually does two things. It creates syntax and it implements the syntax. We'll do this now in two steps. Let's just create the syntax. So we'll have check tactic question mark and then tactic sequence. It doesn't make any sense to have a name here because we are not implementing anything. At this point, this is completely valid syntax, but if you call it with a tactic, so you say check tactic question mark RFL, you will get a tactic not implemented error. So we have to implement it. Okay. So how do I implement it? Well, first of all, I have to give it a name to link it with its implementation. So let's call the name check tactic itself. There is no collision between the syntax and name. This name is not used. Okay. And then I say with an annotation that that's what I'm going to implement. And I'm going to implement a tactic of the form check tactic. Okay. So def, it's conventional to name it something like check tactic implementation. And this is going to be a tactic. Okay. Now a tactic is a function which takes syntax to tactic M unit. Okay. So tactic M unit was what we were implementing previously with tactic with little t. Okay. So what we have is a fun syntax to do. Okay. And let's just say sorry here to see what we are here. Okay. So we have to match syntax. My info view, I will wake up a little bit again. Okay. So we want a tactic M unit here. Okay. Now syntax has to be matched and we have to be a little bit careful here. Okay. Because Lean doesn't know, even though have this annotation, that our syntax is of this form. So we have to match against all syntax, throwing an appropriate error. So let me just start with just the throwing the error part. So if nothing matches, we throw unsupported syntax. Okay. So now if we run this tactic, it'll just throw unsupported syntax. Okay. Now we want to match the syntax, and here is something where one can very easily trip up. Namely, we have to say the syntax kind is tactic. Okay. And then the syntax is of the given form, check tactic question mark followed by attack sequence. Okay. Now what happens? Now if I say sorry, we can look at our state. We can see that we want T tactic M unit, which is exactly what we had here. So let's put this in the place of a sorry, and then I have to indent it correctly to nest it. And now we have our check tactic question mark, which is exactly like check tactic, except that it's implemented by first defining the syntax and then the implementation. Okay, let's just test it before adding the feature we really wanted. Okay, so 2 is less than or equal to 20 by, suppose I say check tactic question mark RFL, then it says the tactic failed. And if I say check tactic question mark and simp, I didn't know if simp succeeded. Yes, it succeeded and 0 goals remain. Okay. So this is what we want to do, but we want to try this. I want to now be able to just use a code action either with my keyboard or clicking and get things to fill in the tactic for me. Remarkably easy. So easy that I will just try to do it without editing the example. So you use TryThis.add suggestion, and the add suggestion, the first has two arguments, both of which are really the first is the syntax, which is where you should add the suggestion, and what is the suggestion that you should add. Okay. So now I have added this TryThis. This ran again, and here you see a TryThis simp, or if I prefer code action like me, there is simp. Okay. So this is remarkably easy. You can have a TryThis.add suggestion. There is a plural version of this if you want to add several suggestions. You want a syntax, that's why I have this stx separately here rather than using the elab. And just what should we replace the syntax with? And if you hover, it will tell you it's supposed to be say, a syntax suggestion. You can have other headers which might be appropriate and so on. Okay. So this is very useful feature in Lean, and fortunately people have done the work to make it extremely easy.